Let's begin. Thank you so much, Barbara, Chris, Kevin, Colin, for your time today. Let's try and make the most of it and why don't we start with a brief introduction? If you guys could tell us a little bit about you, like what role you have and like some other like past roles where you've been a chief executive, that would be wonderful. Barbara, do we want to start with you?
Okay. Hi, great to meet everybody. I am currently the CEO of the company, and I was previously CEO of a company called Boldfish that I sold to Seabull. And then I did another CEO role at a company called Papilia, and basically came up the ranks on the technical marketing side. So Kevin, you want to give an intro?
Yeah, so this is Barbara's and my third time working together, three different startups, and the first one we were senior level people at the startup, but not CEO or C level, but after that we did a company called Netmosphere, and at that time I was the CEO and Barbara was the VP of marketing, and so this time around it's her turn to be CEO, and she's a phenomenal CEO, best choice we ever made. And so prior to that, I actually started working in a research lab, oddly enough, and doing artificial intelligence back in 1982, so Lisp and Smalltalk stuff. That was 1982, just for all you people who weren't born, even close to being born at that point in time, which is everybody. Done a bunch of startups, and so Barbara and I worked together. I ended up spending some time over in London after Netmosphere. Well, actually, after Netmosphere, I did 2 interim CEO jobs. So I worked at a company called At Court, which was doing online process service or legal filings. As a name, it was a turnaround. That one we ended up shutting down. And then after that, I did I was the interim CEO at a company called Biopop, which was a massive messaging system. It was actually Twitter, but we didn't realize it was Twitter, so ended up selling that company to a emergency notification services outfit that processes Amber Alerts and all that kind of stuff. So, and then I was the CEO of a company called Fat Fractal, which is a backend as a service company with a graph API, which is really fun. I worked on that with a guy named Gary Casey, who's maybe on this call. And then what else? Yeah, so that's my experience. So Fat Fractal is still kind of bumping along. So I've had 2 exits so far, 1 shutdown and 1 coasting along but really going nowhere experience. So kind of done all the different versions. Sorry it was so long.
Oh, that's perfect. All right, and then moving on to Colin.
Hey everyone. So I've never been a CEO, and I never actually want to be a CEO. I see how hard Barbara works at this place, and Kevin worked at Fat Fractal. It's a pretty lonely job, and I'm sure they'll tell you how lonely it is. We try and support our CEOs as much as we can, but it's a really tough job. My background's actually in large companies. This is the first startup that I founded with Kevin and Barbara. So my first ever startup. I'm still learning lots of stuff. But my background is in technology, so sort of technical roles in very large companies. British Telecom originally, Credit Suisse was number 2. Obviously, you can probably tell I'm a Brit from the accent. I started in British Telecom in England, and then moved over to the US in New York City with First Boston, which became Credit Suisse. And really focused on networking and networking security because of my telco background. Went back to London, and that's where I met Chris. Chris and I worked at Credit Suisse together for quite a while, and then I jumped back to California or back to the US in California. My wife didn't want to go back to New York, so we went to California. And I worked at a company called Juniper Networks in the pretty early days within the office of the CTO, working for the founder and CTO at Juniper. An awesome guy called Pradeep Sindhu. Learned a lot there. And then I got pulled back into banking and started working with Kevin again. I met Kevin when he was at BT and I was at Credit Suisse. And we started up something called the Innovation Lab for Deutsche Bank. And it was an absolute blast for maybe 3 years. And I know I worked with Kevin. I think this is the third or the fourth time I worked with Kevin. You know, we try and get ourselves apart, but we're much better together. So that's just the way it is. So that's me, Alison. I can only help you with techie stuff.
Lovely. And now let us turn it over to Chris.
Hi folks, I'm Chris Swan. So I've been hopping between startups and large enterprises since I left the Royal Navy in 2000, which had been the thing that I'd done leaving school. And so, as Colin mentioned, Credit Suisse was where we were both in the office of a CTO. And since then, I've kind of been doing CTO roles, startups, big companies, startups, big companies. So it's been a boutique corporate finance company, followed by UBS, followed by a cloud networking company called Cohesive Networks. Most recently, DXE Technology, where I spent most of my time there as CTO for global delivery. So that was by far the biggest role because that organization had over 100,000 people in it. And now I'm no longer a CTO because Colin's the CTO at the App company and I'm an engineer. And so, you know, why stop being a CTO? Well, when somebody invites you to take a ride on their rocket ship, you don't argue about which seat you're going to take.
I love that. So, Chris, why don't we start with you? You just said you started as a CTO and now you're in a different role at a different company. What is the difference in your day-to-day? Like, yeah.
So I'm much more focused on engineering at the moment, and in most startups, you'll generally find a sort of CTO alongside of a VP engineering, and the best explanation of the difference I've ever heard was Brian Cantrell, and he was alongside of his CTO, Jason Hoffman, at a company called Joyent. So Joyent was one of the pioneers of cloud computing, a couple of guys that came out of Sun Microsystems. And they did this talk at Red Monk's Monkey Grower conference about what really the difference is between a VP Eng and a CTO. And so, yeah, the VP Eng is kind of very focused on getting things to work. And the CTO is very focused on the broader technology vision and engaging with the market. I remember one time meeting with somebody at VMware who'd been the CTO and then the general manager of their networking business unit, Martin Casado, who'd been the founder of Nicira, the first sort of software-defined network company. And he said to me, "What sort of CTO are you?" And I said, "I think I'm a marketing CTO." And he said, "Good, that's the right sort," because a big part of a CTO's role is getting to market, whereas the VP Eng is much more focused on, let's build some stuff and make sure that it works and that the engineers are being happy and productive.
Proving clearly that titles don't matter at startups, because you do all those stuff too.
Yeah.
Definitely. In a startup, you fill all different roles. So I'd love to hear about filling all different roles and like, what do you do on a day-to-day? So Chris talked a little bit about that. Why don't we start with Colin for this one?
So day-to-day tends to be driven by my calendar. So we meet with lots of people. So our mission is a little bit different and very, very huge. We're not going to be able to do it alone. So meeting with people that are interested in what we're doing, explaining how we're going about it, why it's different, hurting their heads, watching people be literally speechless and giving them time to process what the hell we're doing, and working with partners and investors and anything else that gets thrown up into my calendar. That normally takes primary, because as Chris said, in the CTO role, that's your primary role is outward facing. However, one of the great things about working with Chris is he's in the UK and I'm in California, despite the English accent. And so when production problems hit, and it's in my time zone, and production problems always hit, then there's always some technology that's playing up. It means that I can work at it while I'm awake, and then Chris can work at it while he's awake, and we've got a guy in India that can cover some of the gaps for us. So the world not being flat physically is a really good thing. The world being very flat digitally is also a very good thing. So we can pass tickets along, and we use GitHub an awful lot for pretty much everything technical. As you can see all our code in there, you can see all our problem tickets. You can see all the discussion going on about problem tickets and stuff. So we're a very open company. So keeping an eye on that and keeping an eye on production is sometimes so important that I have to drop out of meetings, but most of the time not. So yeah, it's a fine balance. Plus, I get to have some fun doing some coding once in a while, which is always a blast. So we're actually learning, how actually people use our product is been a recent focus. So.
Awesome. Lovely to hear that. And then Kevin, why don't we go with your day-to-day? What does that look like?
So mostly what I'm focusing on is apps and helping developers create apps using the platform, and doing a lot of documentation and papers and articles and that kind of stuff. So and then I've, like everybody else, where everybody's hands-on with something. Anybody who can write code is writing code, so I get to write code as well, which is huge fun. And I think that's a good operating role. I think everybody should be writing code all the time, especially using your own, as Colin said, use your own stuff, so you know how it works and understand when it's easy and when it's annoyingly hard to use, which always needs improvement. But beyond that, I'm kind of a guru on Google Sheets. So if you need a spreadsheet, I'm your guy. Although I hate spreadsheets, but I'm really good at it. So.
Got it. And then we'll finish this last question off with Barbara. What does your day-to-day look like as CEO of the ad company?
Well, Chris introduced me to somebody called Katz Keeley, who has this fabulous podcast on leadership. And what she says, I think, is right on. It's the CEO's only role is really to make an environment where everybody can thrive and do their best work. And so for me, that takes place every day. That's what I'm focused on. So if somebody gets stuck and they need budget, they need something to bounce something off of somebody, whatever they need, that's what I'm there for. So that can take any shape and form, from hand coding our first dev website to meeting with investors to make sure we've got money flowing into the company.
Lovely. So even though your role is CEO, you fill all the roles across the board. I love that. And I love your description of what a CEO is. Now I'd love to ask you guys a couple of questions about your leadership structure and the at company. So Barbara, I've read a couple of your articles on how the at company is a flat organization for hackers that are just coming in. Would you like to tell me a little bit more about what that entails and how that looks like for the at company?
Sure. So your typical organization has multiple layers, and the larger the company, the more the layers. Until most, in a very large company, most people have never met or will never meet the CEO. And And that starts very early on in a company's life. So when even a very small company typically has at least one layer in between the CEO and everybody else. And so what we decided when we started the company was that we weren't going to do that. Although I think we kind of worked into that more than deciding it right off the bat. But it just felt right, and we felt like people could be more productive if we did a flat organization. And there are some of those out there. There's not many, so it's kind of hard to model after other organizations. But we're working on doing it more project-based. So people organize by project, and they say, I'm going to do this thing. Who wants to help me? And people just jump in and start helping. And it's actually really fun to watch. And it's really fun to work in too, because you get to jump into whatever you want. And so you get all sorts of experience that you wouldn't normally get at a typical company. Typically, a company hires you, they give you a job description, and you do that job, and you're trained to do that job. And that's all there is to it. And so we're doing things very, very differently. You do whatever you want, basically.
Yeah, no, that is wonderful. And so Barbara, Kevin, Colin, you guys are the co-founders of the @Company. How did you decide who would fill which role? Like, who's going to be CPO, CTO, and CEO? What was that like? And from your faces, I think that there's an interesting story behind that. So I'm not sure who wants to start, but go for it.
On you go.
Alrighty, so the company started with a cup of coffee almost 7.5 years ago between Kevin and myself. And basically it was, we were both fed up with the way people are treated on the internet and people are treated in society. And the fundamental problem was like there isn't an identity that you can own on the internet that you actually own. So we actually started trying to write some code all the way back then, but there were some really big fundamental problems that we actually couldn't solve alone. So we sort of put it to bed until, I guess, almost 3 years ago now, when we started having another look at it. And I was coming to the end of a contract, Kevin had come to the end of a contract, and we had another cup of coffee and like, let's go do something. And Kevin always says like, talking about it is nothing, writing some code actually turns it into something that's real. So we actually started writing some code, and it looked pretty good. And I think the question came up was, who wants to be CEO? And like, well, definitely not me. I've already told you that I don't want to do that. And Kevin didn't want to do it. So just let me think about it. And I'll hand it back to Kevin and tell you what happened next.
Yeah, so Barbara and I ended up having coffee out in I guess Oakland, or and just catching up. And so I mean, I basically told her what we were doing. Wasn't really sure how interested it was, and then we had a follow-up. We had a dinner of various people that we thought might be interested in Palo Alto. And I think at that point, Barbara said she was all in. And I said, great, you get to be CEO. And she's like, why do I have to be CEO? And so it's your turn to be CEO. So she couldn't argue against that, I think. But yeah, that's how the three of us came together. And it's been fun ever since.
Yeah, the truth of the matter is my technical skills are not that great. I mean, I can do some application programming, and that's about it. And so starting the company, it was a big technology lift. And so it made a lot of sense for Kevin and Colin to focus on that, and for me to do all the other odds and ends. And believe me, I wasn't jumping up and down saying I want to be CEO. It's not the most fun job in the world.
Yeah. The other story that I would say, Allison, is so what I'd say the precise role, if you said what is your title, Colin's precise title is Chief Colin Officer, Barbara's Chief Barbara Officer, and I'm Chief Kevin Officer, and Chris is Chief Chris Officer. So that once you start working together, everybody knows exactly what that means, because we kind of, I think most startups, we kind of defy conventional titles. I mean, they misconstrue it a lot of ways. Like Chris does so much more than just getting engineering code out the door. He does so much more out in the public speaking and blogging and tweeting, and he's phenomenal at it, and I suck at it. So that's not what you would expect the title to connote.
No, definitely.
We tried very hard, Alison, not to have titles. We really did, but corporate America insists on you having titles for some reason. We'd much rather, I think, go back to Chief Colin Officer and Chief Chris Officer and Chief Barbara Officer. The conventions are pretty strong in the world, it seems.
No, I love that. I think I'm promoting myself as Chief Allison Officer for the future. So for Chris, I'd love to hear from you as someone who like came in to this company, not like founding it, but like, how did it feel to join an organization with like that lack of hierarchy coming from these bigger companies that have this like really defined like hierarchy of like CEO and then like so many different layers between like everything. So what struck you the most that was like different when you joined this organization? What did the Act company do that like really like made you think and made you want to hop on board?
The big adjustment in the first like 2 or 3 weeks was having to figure out that I didn't have to fight everybody about everything. And yeah, after 5 and a bit years of doing that in my last company, it just becomes kind of second nature that the hierarchical structures and often the tension that's deliberately put into those structures is kind of pitting people against each other all of the time. Yeah, so you've got this sort of Hunger Games going on of, you know, you need to fight for resources, you need to fight for attention, you need to fight to get people on your side. And you know, the big difference with how the Act company is running is I'm just allowed to get on with the stuff that needs doing. And when I say to people, it's like, hey, shall we do it this way instead? They're like, yeah, guess so, we'll give it a try. And so there's none of the conflict that I think I've been so accustomed to in not just my last role, but you know, pretty much everything that I've done before coming to the Act company.
That is incredible. All right, and then I would love to ask a more general question. Anyone is free to answer this. It's still about the Act company, but your slogan is reinvent the internet. How do you guys reinvent the internet?
Go on, Colin.
I'll jump in if Barbara's not going to, I guess. I do want to double down just quickly on what Chris said. I actually look forward to an argument at the Act company when there is an argument. Kevin and I get very excited when there's an argument because it's an opportunity to learn. So you never learn anything from somebody that agrees with you. So and I look forward to an argument with Chris. I look forward to an argument with anybody because it's an opportunity to learn. And there's just the right way for the company, which is the way we always go. But actually understanding people's points of view and taking that time is really, really important. So yeah, actually looking forward to those arguments and debates is very, very unusual, I think. It's no fun in a large corporation when there's hierarchy. Does that make sense, Alison?
Yes, I also like fights because it brings everything like out in the open, you know, like it's like you get to hear everybody's like thoughts on an issue, and then you get to like move forward and like learn from each other, which I really enjoy. So yes, for fights isn't the right word, but arguments, conflicts, because without conflict,
Debate.
nothing. Yeah.
And along the way, we are trying to reinvent the internet, right?
Oh yes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's always a debate with people, and that's often the debate we start with. And when we started the company, I mean, essentially the vision is that everybody, every entity, and everything has their own identity on the internet that's theirs, nobody else's. So, you know, I've got @Colin. Nobody else in the world has got that, you know, set of characters. It's just me. And unless, I mean, I could sell it to somebody else, I guess, at a nominal fee. But it's my identity to sell and my entity to do, and I can put whatever data I want behind it. Which means instead of me having to log into the internet has to log into me. So, you know, it's the internet on my terms. And the discussion point often, you know, in the early days of the company when we were, you know, we weren't, you know, there was just the three founders going knocking on doors, was you can't change anything. Nobody's interested in privacy. I mean, you can't change anything. I don't really care about Facebook having my data. I don't really care about Google having my data, or, you know, I just don't care about that stuff because, you know, all these great things are great, and I like everything to be free. And it's impossible, right? Nobody could ever change that business model. It's impossible. We've got it forever. You know, fast forward 2 and a bit years, I think we've already seen people are not liking the way it is, and it's dawning on them that there is not a sustainable model of having all of your what other companies call users, we call people, being the product, right? So if you're not paying for it, then you're probably the product. And that was sort of dawning, and I think it got doubled down on when the Netflix sort of docudrama went out. And people realized that data that they're giving away is being used against them to manipulate them into you know, buying something, liking something, doing something, whatever it is. So I think the data problem is one thing, and then the use of that data for manipulation is another thing. And turning the tables on what's classically being called now big tech, and putting the power back into each individual to own that data. And sure, I mean, I'm absolutely fine with Facebook having some data, my power company having some data, and you know, as long as I get benefit out of it and I can know what the benefit is, then game on. That's absolutely fine. But it's the internet on my terms, not on somebody else's terms. So yeah, that's what we mean by turning the tables, is putting the power back where it should be, with whoever's, you know, owning the data. And I think that that's going to slowly spill out into probably a global debate on who owns the metadata, the data about the data. So I think that's the next big uncharted frontier, is who owns the metadata. Is it me because I'm wandering around someplace in the digital world, or is it both of us, or is it just the owner of the digital world? That's yet to be decided, I think, and that's yeah, we got to start at the beginning, and the beginning is everybody owning their own data. That's not unreasonable. So yeah, it's difficult. It sounds impossible. There was lots and lots and lots of pushback. We don't care about pushback. We're like, this is the right thing to do. Right thing to do is to do this. And I think we just got the timing right more than anything else. If we tried this 5 years earlier, would not have happened. But as Chris said, it's been a rocket ship for all those reasons.
Yeah, no, this is really good. Very, very good timing, definitely, with all the like concerns about Facebook using our data. But I love what you said about like, this is really important, so this is why we're doing it. I think Kevin was at one of our talks earlier today with Neo, and they brought up the Elon Musk quote that was, if something should be done, you should still do it, even if the probability of success is low, or the probability of failure is high. So that, I think, really like speaks to like, if it's something that should be done, like just go for it. And he was talking about Tesla. He thought that would fail. So imagine how wrong look at how wrong he was. So speaking of that talk, I know Kevin and Colin asked for some tough questions. So he said in his talk, the Ali Partovi's talk, that it's the best run companies are by a really smart dictator, and having an organizational hierarchy is more efficient because you know who's making the decision, and it's a lot faster than 6 people going into a room discussing about one decision for 2 hours and then like having to hear all those different opinions. I'd love to hear what your response is to that.
I love that. That is like so opposite to, I mean, that works, that absolutely works, and you can get a company going that way. But what happens when that dictator leaves? What happens to the company then? It doesn't have a lot of strong people in it because nobody's made a decision for 20 years. So I don't think that, and there was a book called Good to Great, and it talked about how that works for a short period of time, but it doesn't build a company that's going to last forever. And but so our decision process is really fast, and everybody knows who makes the decision because they make the decision themselves. So it's a real simple decision process. They put together a log, they say what it is that they're going to, what they want to decide on. They welcome debate. Everybody can put their comments in the log, and they say the decision's gonna happen tomorrow. So get your comments in, and then the decision's made. And if we need to discuss it, we have a meeting, a stand-up every day, so we can discuss things at a stand-up if need be. And everybody has their input, and the decision's made, and then somebody runs with it. So I would argue it's faster than, like I've been out at Harvest for 2 days, and there have been decisions being made while I'm gone. So it's actually faster to not have me involved in those decisions. I still monitor it. I can put my input in, but they get made without me.
I think it's that whole thing. If you want to go quick, go alone. If you want to go far, then you need to bring people along with you. But a lot of what we're touching on here is, hierarchies are how the military has been run for millennia. And when corporations came along, they just kind of inherited that organizational form because the communications technologies of the time kind of favored passing information up and down through the layers on bits of paper. But now that we've got networks, we can have different organizational forms. And I think Jeff Bezos has been really the greatest pioneer of this with the Amazon structure and a very network-centric organization and this whole idea of 2 pizza teams or whatever. But what we're doing isn't just kind of cargo culting what's going on at Amazon. We're exploring other ways that we can learn from all of the companies around us in terms of harvesting this communication technology and having better organizational forms to make use of it.
I think also we see breakthroughs coming outside of any perceived hierarchy. I mean, we have amazing things that result from people that you wouldn't expect it to result from or come from all the time. And that's magical to watch.
That's incredible. So another tough question, but a flat organization like right now, the @company is a very close-knit, smaller company. How do you see this company scaling, to hundreds, thousands of employees or like people involved? Like how will your organizational structure work if you guys blow up and with your rocket ship example, like are flying off into space? How do you guys envision that?
So I have a theory, and we won't know until it happens. So if you think about hierarchies, they have to be organized and managed. Okay, that's fine. That takes effort, and that effort is mainly waste. I mean, it's just waste, right? Middle managers don't do anything. So companies have now started moving to this sort of hybrid of networky. Like the Bezos example is probably a good one. Sort of half networky, half hierarchy. That's actually pretty effective. But we're trying to do something that's a lot more biological. it's going to grow, right? The organization will grow and the structures will grow within the structures. And the structures that make sense will grow and be maintained. And the ones that don't make sense will be harvested back and recycled. So it's literally being brave enough, and this is Barbara being brave enough to let the organization literally grow as an organism and not try and map it out and constrain it. So that's my thesis. And of course, you can't prove that thesis until the organization grows. So it could be a self-fulfilling prophecy, or it could be completely wrong. I don't know.
Lovely. No, that sounds like I feel like if I go to Harvard Business School, the @company may be one of our case studies for organizational structure, and I would be so excited to read about it. So
yeah, we wrote a paper, well, myself and a guy called David Lacey from the Royal Mail in the UK wrote a paper, which basically said, bottom left, hierarchical, top right, biological. So I've been thinking about this with numerous brains. I think Chris might have been involved in that one as well. So it's been out there as a thought for a very long time, and this is a grand experiment.
very, very cool. I'm very excited to see how you guys grow. It is 1:42, so I do want to open it up to audience questions. I had about a page more of questions on my end to ask you guys. So if nobody raises their hand or types something in the chat, I will continue asking questions. But please, hackers, feel free to type in the chat, raise your hand. I will get to you guys as soon as possible. So yes, feel free. So I've got some quick, just general questions for you guys, but I have a specific question for Barbara. So Barbara, as a woman CEO, or as an aspiring woman CEO that I am, I love hearing about your perspective. Could you tell me a little bit about your experience as like a woman CEO? What challenges have you faced specifically to being female, and like what is your advice to other people who want to lead potentially their own company, and like, yeah.
Well, one of the things that we talked about early on, before I actually took the CEO role, is women get much less investment than men do typically from venture investors. So it's a risk to have a woman CEO. It's a risk that you can't raise money. So, and the reason for that, and I worked for a volunteer organization who's trying to change that, but the reason for that I don't think is real biased. I think it's pattern matching on the investors' part. I think they are just used to seeing young guys starting tech companies, and that's what's been successful, and that's what they choose because it's safe, and they're investing other people's money. So in our case, we haven't raised venture capital yet. We've raised from individual investors who believe in this vision and really want to see it come to market. So I do think that's absolutely a challenge as a woman, and something that I'm working on in multiple different ways to fix. And other than that, it's just, I think it was always funny to me, my first CEO role, I had a VP of marketing who's this big, tall guy, and we'd walk into a room and everybody would turn to him and say, "Hi, you must be the CEO." And he was always so embarrassed. And it's just kind of funny. People have these just bias. And I hope by the time you're CEO, Allison, that's long gone. And because I do think it's changing.
Thank you. I will say that though in Zoom, it's hard to tell height. I am at a very, very tall 5'3". So, so anyone I may stand next to will probably be taller than me. In fact, I'm considering starting a startup at my school, and I'm an incubator, and one of my co-founders right here is much taller than me, and is our CTO. So maybe potentially in the future, we may have that same issue, but let's hope that bias towards like men being CEOs changes for the future. So
And Colin is like 6'4", so you can't tell on Zoom, but he's a very tall human.
wow.
And nobody wore a badge, not CEO, just for Barbara.
Oh my, that's the fun thing about Zoom. We're all eye to eye, but once we're in person, Colin's about more than a foot taller than me, so I'll be definitely looking up at him. Lovely. All right, so let us start. If there are no hacker input as of right now, let's start with a question that the panelists themselves have submitted. So to Barbara and Colin, why is fun so important?
You can go,
Colin,
Barbara.
why don't we begin? Oh, Barbara, let's begin with you.
It's important to me. So I just think that, you know, you spend so much of your life working. If it's not fun, you know, what that you've wasted that much of your life. And I think a light, fun environment just makes it easier to have the debates and the real discussions that need to take place when people can poke fun at themselves or you know, handle a topic lightly. I think mastering fun is actually a great skill set to have, because you can accomplish a lot more because you get people having fun around you, and people like that. I don't think I said that very well, but Colin, go ahead.
Wait, I love that. But before Colin goes, you said mastering fun is a skill. How do you master fun? I do not think I have that skill just yet, but I would love to learn how to master fun.
Oh, you outsource what you can. Find other people who will pick up the fun and run with it. And we have a lot of that at the ad company.
Lovely. That's a good strategy. I'll keep that in mind. And Colin, why is fun so important to you?
Two reasons, I guess, is number one, if everybody's doing what they find fun, then you just have a much stronger company, and everybody's having fun and enjoying it. So the things that I do and I have fun with, I'm pretty sure most people wouldn't. Chris and I have fun doing things that most people, and we're just different, and that's okay. But, you know, I would never want to do, I know, tax forms. I'd never want to do invoicing, but we have this marvelous lady called Cheryl who's just awesome at it and clearly has fun, otherwise she wouldn't be so awesome at it, right? So finding something you're awesome at and you have fun doing and then doing it, I think becomes a superpower. And actually Musk has talked about this as well. And yet, how does he get so much work done? Well, because he's having fun all the time. I think that having fun is a superpower. So, you know, the ad company is full of people doing what they want to do because they can do whatever they want to do. And if they're having fun doing it, I mean, not to say it's not hard work. I mean, lots of fun is hard work. It just means that the whole company is superpowered. Now, so that's one side of it. The other side of it is the most successful companies in the world are ones that make their products fun to use, right? So normally the innovation cycle goes like this. You know, first of all, it's all about features. So think about the first phones. It was all about you can make a phone call, and then they get really complicated because, you know, everyone's trying to add features, and features are really difficult to deal with. So then the next wave, you know, so you think about the first phones, like Motorola phones. Get one of those, the phone's pretty small, the manual's about this big because it's full of features. So then some challenger comes in and says, you know, I'm going to make it simple. The challenger in this case was Nokia and Symbian in the cell phone world. And they made, you know, you didn't need a manual anymore because you could use the phone because it was simple to use. So it had all the features, but it was simple to use. And Nokia made a whole bunch of money there. That's great. But then Apple came in, and then later Android came in, and they made the cell phone experience fun. And they're riding that wave, right? I mean, they've made billions of dollars on making fun experiences for all the people using their devices. So fun makes money, but there is a danger that the fun turns into what I call magic. And if you go over the precipice of fun and it's just magic and nobody can understand it, then you're back into the world of features again. So you're going to be riding that edge of fun, right? As soon as you see somebody selling a fun product with a bunch of features, then you know they've crossed over the precipice and they're back into features again. And the rest of the market will catch them up. So have fun inside the company, but make sure your products are fun to use as well. That's why it's important.
Lovely, lovely. So what you're saying is, if you're at the company, you're going to have a lot of fun. And because it's a flat organization, you're going to get a lot of flexibility to do what you want. I think this is a perfect time to plug the intern program. So any hackers out there, the company does have an intern program. You should definitely check it out if you're interested. And Denise just posted about Barbara's post on building a flat organization. I would also definitely recommend checking that out. And now I have a question. Oh, yes, for internships, contact Denise at @sign.com. She is a lovely human being. I don't know if her camera's on, but if she wants to wave and say hi, she is such a sweetheart. She's the person that got in contact with Hack Princeton to bring the company to this lovely hackathon. So she's a great person. Definitely reach out to her. So I'd love to hear one of the things that I've been trying to work on as a potential aspiring future CEO, but also just like as a human being, is my network. And I'm an extrovert, as you might be able to tell. So I place a great importance on people and connections and developing that. So I guess here's your time to do the academy speech. Who helped you get where you are today? How did they help you? Who are your mentors? How did you choose them? Who do you look up to for inspiration? That was a bunch of different questions, but if you pick one or pick a couple to talk about your network and who got you where you are today, I would love to hear it. Chris, I feel like I haven't heard from you in a bit, so why don't we start with you?
So I've had some amazing bosses who've become mentors over the years, and I think actually two of them are involved with that company, which kind of shows that contact is enduring over time. So yeah, Colin and I used to work for a guy called Steve Yatko, who is the head of R&D at Credit Suisse. Amazing guy. He's gone on to do some really cool stuff in the tech world. And we still do things with Steve today. And then Andy Brown was somebody else who I think we first met at Credit Suisse. And then I worked with Andy again at UBS. And Andy's been a comet in my life. He kind of, he'll zoom off into the cosmos and then, turn around and come back in. And there's always cool stuff happening around Andy. And I think one of the other things Andy helped me with was he got me a coach, and the coach that I got was somebody who focused on a thing called strengths-based coaching. So instead of find your weaknesses and try and make up for them, it was kind of you can reach a level where it's kind of there's nothing you can do about your weaknesses. You've just got to accept them. And so my coach, she was able to kind of get me to go, okay, focus on strengths and how do you turn those strengths not just into strengths, but superpowers. And it was really good to have that opportunity. And it was really good to have the support from Andy to do that.
Lovely. And now why don't we go to Colin for this one?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty ditto to Chris. There's a guy called Andy Brown who is a Brit living in New York, And once I met Andy, I realized that he was going to be pretty important in my life, and I should listen to Andy whenever he said something. So listen very carefully to Andy, and he's always there. If I drop him a text and say, like, what should I do? He's always there. And interestingly, Andy has forced me into mentoring other people, which has been actually a lot of fun. He said, yeah, he says, you by all means get mentorship from me, that's fine, but you should go mentor some other people. So I've actually been doing that over the last year, and it's a lot of fun, and it makes you really think, right? So you only know something pretty well if you can teach it, and forcing yourself to teach it is actually a really good thing to do. So yeah, that's it. And I actually said my other mentor is Kevin. Often Kevin says you should do this, and yeah, we argue a lot, and I really like arguing, but arguing means I'm learning. So lots of the time, lots of my habits really come out of working with Kevin over the years.
Lovely. So let's follow that train to Kevin. Who are your mentors? You are a source of inspiration yourself, but who inspires you? Where, yeah.
I think I'm not. But I'm an introvert, so I don't do networking. I mean, I learn as much as I can from as many people as I can surreptitiously, but I mean, my relationships are few and deep. But I mean, the people that I just adore, I've learned a ton from, and they probably don't even know it. So I can't really call that mentorship. It's just kind of watching lots of super smart people do super cool stuff and try to learn what I can. But yeah, I'm kind of I don't know, I'm the mold breaker on most things. So I don't think I'm the right person to ask.
No, I like that. I like that. There are many different ways of gaining observations, and I think observing other people, other successful people, is perfect. So speaking of a successful person, let's close it off with Barbara. Who helped you get where you are today?
Well, I have to second Colin on Kevin because I've worked for Kevin at a couple different companies and really enjoyed working for him. But like Kevin, I'm also an introvert. And so I do more observational, seeing who's most effective at what they do. And actually one of my best women or female mentors is my dog. she is she's a pit bull, but she's very gentle with other dogs, but she is a leader, and she makes the other dogs feel safe. And so they follow her because they feel safe following her. And so I really like that style of leadership.
I love that. I am very much a dog person, so I approve of that. So with the last minute left, thank you for your time. We're going to do one last question. If there is only one thing you hope people in the audience do today as a result of our conversation, what would it be? And before our talk, we went through a dry run and we had 2 people volunteer to be first, but I'm going to go out of the blue and surprise them and say, Chris, why don't we have you go first for this one?
I'd say find the way of learning that you love. And I know everybody's a student and in education, but learning's different from education. And so, whether it's podcasts or YouTube or reading books or hackathons, find a way of learning that you love.
Lovely. And then we'll go on to Kevin.
So I think everybody should build something or create something. So just get on with it. Find something you really are interested in and build it. And don't hesitate. Don't overthink it. Just get on with it.
Lovely. Colin?
So you can change the world, and All it needs is a really good idea and execution. But if something in the world's really annoying you, that's probably enough motivation to go do it. And don't listen to anybody who says you can't do it. They're wrong, you're right, go do it.
Lovely. And we will close off this lovely panel with Barbara. What is one thing that these hackers, after listening to our conversation, should do?
So I know everybody always says follow your passion, but I always kind of turn that around and say, instead of doing what you love what you do. So your next job, your next project, just go for it. Just completely enjoy it, get everything out of it, squeeze every last ounce that you can out of it. And you'll find the next project will be even more exciting and more fun.
I love that. And I think that's the perfect way to end our panel. Thank you, Chris, Kevin, Colin, and Barbara, so much for giving us your time today. I learned so much, and I'm amazed by all of your incredible wisdom. So thank you.